This podcast is brought to you by the Florida Road to Resilience Summit, hosted in beautiful Tampa, Florida on February 12th and 13th of this coming year. We will drop the registration link in the notes for this and all future podcasts.
All right. September is National Preparedness Month. Resilience is something that really speaks to how people live and exist in their day to day lives. But as we think about disasters and how to be ready for challenges that might come, it's wonderful to have a designated month that reminds us of how important it is to prepare now for later. This month, John and I have been thinking about challenges our local communities might be facing, being ready ourselves, and considering things that probably slip our minds in the day to day hustle of life. This year's theme, Preparedness Starts at Home. Pause. This year's theme is Preparedness Starts at Home, and I think it's an excellent segue into our guests today. We strive to find and elevate voices that care about community and that we truly admire. So today we have Vivek Kilaraman joining us, founder of Perci, who is here to tell us about his company's mission and work, as well as share some of his experiences with us.
Thanks for that, Ashley. And I wanted to follow up on the point that you made there in the opening. It reminded me of a reference that we often use in the resilient space a lot, and it further emphasizes, why we have a whole month dedicated to preparedness, and that is that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. I know we've all heard that, but it really is so true, and it emphasizes, this month, Preparedness Month. So with that, welcome, Vivek. It is a pleasure to have you join us today. I would love to hear a little bit about your background and what initially drew you to the resilience field.
Thank you. Hi, I'm very excited to be here. The reason we started Percy is I moved to Los Angeles about 17 years ago. And before that, I had never experienced earthquakes and wildfires. I was worried about how to protect my family. So I started taking classes with the LA City Fire Department, LA County Fire Department. I got certified, but I still did not feel that I was ready, my family was ready for a disaster. And then when Thomas fires happened in Ventura here in December of 2017, and then followed by Woolsey fires and Camp Fire up in Northern California, where the whole town of Paradise was lost, we had a lot of family and friends who were impacted by those fires. Some of them came and stayed with us during the fires. And I asked them, what worked for you? What did not work for you? And a lot of them said, I had a go bag. I had my important documents put in a lockbox. But when the sheriff knocked at the door and they had half an hour, 3 hours to evacuate, panic set in and they missed a lot of things. They forgot, that there was a go bag sitting in the garage that nobody had looked at for the last 6 months or 3 years. And that's what really triggered our approach, our idea to start a company where it makes it easy to do those kind of things for preparedness. So we have a couple of products and we'll talk about those as we go along. But that was really the inspiration. First, being scared of being here in LA, and then noticing within our families and friends who thought they were prepared only to realize that they were not.
And being able to be prepared and know about what your community needed, whether it's your community of people or, what threats your community is facing, actually helps you to actually live and exist and, be a little bit more resilient in your day-to-day life, but also led to a business venture. So.
Absolutely. And
Yeah, absolutely.
that makes a lot of sense. So I live in a single family residential home here in Los Angeles. On our block, there are 44 homes. And ever since I've been thinking about disaster readiness, which has been for a long time, I've lived in this house for 10 years. Ever since then, when we moved here, we have tried to create a community. We have a group chat in our WhatsApp for 32 of the 44 homes that are here. People watch out for each other, help each other out during the pandemic, COVID pandemic. Folks were helping each other for getting groceries for some of the older folks or people who were vulnerable. So I think creating that community, and that's one thing we emphasize a lot. That's kind of our mission in creating that neighborhood, creating that community that helps each other out during the disaster and before the disaster.
That is amazing to hear, and I think it's something that John and I also talk about is when you start to mitigate for one thing, you start to solve a bunch of other different problems and come up with things, that you wouldn't if you didn't just talk to your neighbors and start somewhere. I think that's really the sort of takeaway that I'm hearing from this is you started with one thing, and it's amazing what you've created as a result.
Yeah, I think Ashley and for me, it's, having been in this space for about 3 decades, most even professionals, they plan for the expected, but it's really the unexpected that you have to be ready for. And, I think Vivek and what his company provides, really helps folks take a step in that direction. With that being said, Vivek, Ashley and I are curious about your journey. I know you shared a little bit of that in that response with us, but could you tell us how your journey has relates, to resilience and if you don't mind sharing, a little bit about how this came to fruition for you, this Percy journey.
Absolutely. Thank you. So I think one of the places where we started, as I mentioned, is looking at community, looking at our friends and family when they went through disaster. So one of the things, as I mentioned, was a go bag. We tend to think I bought a go bag and I'm all set for disaster. And I think that has harmed us in many ways because we think it's almost like, you're trying to lose weight and you say, I want to take a pill and be done with it, as opposed to working on your diet and exercise. It's a way of life. So we strongly believe, given the increasing frequency and intensity of disasters, being ready for disasters is going to be a way of life for all of us. So instead of saying, I'm done with my go bag and I'm all set now, what we encourage through our products and services is to think about it and change, have a different mindset. So, say, for example, for one of the first things we developed is a Perci vest. It's an evacuation wearable. It has 10 pockets, 25 emergency essential items equally distributed all across the vest in the front and the back and on the inside. When a sheriff knocks at your door and you have 30 minutes or 2 hours to evacuate, you put the vest on, all your emergency evacuation things are in there. Why would you put it on? So, what talking about, John, to your question, the journey. When I interviewed folks who had survived wildfires, and then we also interviewed folks who had survived Hurricane Harvey in Houston area, Hurricane Rita, and folks in Florida, where you are, John, the thing that kept coming back was, I forgot. I forgot I had a go bag, or I had a go bag, but I was not home. My husband did not know, or my son did not know. So the idea with the vest is not just that you have these items in 10 pockets. The idea is it is hanging in your closet. You look at it every day. Today morning, when you put your shirt on to go to work, you look at it every day. Everyone in family looks at it and you don't forget about it. Second thing we always recommend is use it every day when you're walking your dog, or maybe not every day, once a week, once a month. You go do a grocery run, put it on, try it, get comfort. If you go for a run, we provide, let's say, a headlamp. Put a headlamp on when you go on your run with the vest. You get comfortable with it. The second biggest thing we try to do here is keep you hands free. When the disaster happens, you will be focused on protecting your family and your home, as you should be. You are not thinking, oh, let me ask my grandma to carry that 30-pound go bag or a backpack to get out of here. She can just put the vest on. Similarly, think about other vulnerable people in your household. Somebody who has a disability, maybe somebody who has some other kinds of issues. So those things becomes very important. So that was one part of our journey. The second part of our journey was disaster readiness, as you know, is way more than just evacuation, right? What is your FEMA and other agencies talk about? Where is your meeting place? Have you backed up your documents? What's your communication plan? When, say, for example, I'm at work, my wife is home or she's out, let's say, grocery shopping, or she's at work as well. My kids are in school. Who's going to go pick up the kids at school when the big earthquake happens here in Los Angeles? I'm in downtown. She's in Santa Monica. We cannot get to school because the freeway is busted. So creating that, say, school safety plan. 45% parents don't know that when you get to school, school itself has an evacuation plan. You're not going to find the kids there. What's your pet safety plan? Your work says you have to travel to Washington for work. You have two dogs or a cat. You live in a high-rise building in downtown Los Angeles. Who's going to go take care of them if something happens? So we have a mobile app in which you systematically create those plans. One of the problems we are trying to solve there is almost after every disaster, you can hear folks say, I cannot believe this happened. We could not imagine that this would happen to us. We always thought it would happen to somebody else. So in the app, we create a framework for you to start imagining, like, if this happens, what are you going to do? Whether it's your meeting place, packing list, you can have the West, but if you have 30 minutes, what are you going to evacuate with? I interviewed a survivor at Thomas Fires in Ventura. She had to evacuate very quickly. She got to, as she was evacuating, she had put her kids in the car. She had some bags full with clothing that they would need. They had picked up some of their computer, other important things. Her husband was a musician, their guitar. As she was leaving, she noticed on the mantle in the living room, there were ashes from her grandfather that she had, and she didn't want to lose them. So she grabbed them and left with them. But she forgot her mementos. Her grandmother had given her some jewelry that she forgot. 3 days later, they come back. Their appliances had turned into a puddle. So those are the kind of things invariably that people say, oh, I'm glad I survived, my family survived, but I wish I had picked up those kind of things. So in the app, we help you think about all of those things that you might not. Have you saved enough money? If you're not going to be able to get back home for the next 6 months, can you stay in an Airbnb? And the last thing I will say is we also offer both of these solutions, West and an app, as a employee benefit to get your employees ready. So for employers, you have a dashboard where you get a real-time view of how prepared your workforce is. If you have a lot of remote folks working in New Orleans, in Florida, in Southern California, in Western North Carolina, which got slammed by Hurricane Helene last year, as you know, what is the disaster resilience of your workforce? Your team is working on a big project. You have some deliverables. If you can't, something happens and 10 of those folks are impacted, of course, they're going to be focused on protecting their family or recovery from whatever that has happened. So we offer a employer-based solution as well. So sorry for the long answer, but I wanted to share with you our journey of how we got to that place.
No, that was a great response too, and it reminded me of another famous reference, and that's everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth, right? It's the boxing reference, and I think that's very applicable in this case, and kind of what you were speaking to there. I did want to mention a couple of statistics before we move on. You talked about persons with disabilities. It should be noted that 84% of persons with disabilities reported not having a personal preparedness plan. Um, that is outrageous that we don't ensure that we have that baked into our preparedness plans. I'm very certain that the efforts you're making are gonna help.
I'll give you a real world example. And, when we think about preparedness, that's what really drives us. I can tell you there are two examples here during the LA fires 6 months ago in January of 2025. There was a gentleman in Altadena, which is close to the hills, which got impacted severely by the fires. He was older, and he had a 40 or 35, 40-year-old son who had cerebral palsy. And he was the only one taking care of him. But he didn't have the strength to pick him up. And he waited for help to come, and the help never came. He never got the alerts, and there are a lot of other issues, and they both perished. There was a mother. She had a child who was neurodivergent, I think is the correct phrase. Some of the challenges, and many of those kids prefer to have a routine. And when a disaster happens, routines goes out of the window. So her son would not leave, and she kept on trying to get him out, and he would not leave, and they both perished. So It's not, these are real people lost because of things not in place. So I think certain jurisdictions are making an effort to do that. So I think in Florida, there is a repository with the or a database where folks can go in and say, yes, we have somebody with disability in our household. So the first responders know that those are the houses you want to target in addition to other places to make sure that those folks are helped. And the way we try to think about it in our little small way is when you download the app and create your profile, we ask you, do you have somebody with disability, whether it is cognitive issues, disability, mobility issues, any medical issues? Somebody's using a oxygen tank. How will they evacuate? Somebody is on dialysis. If there is 7 days go by and you were due for your dialysis 2 days from now, and all the dialysis centers are closed because of a disaster, what is your plan? You live on the 18th floor and your grandma lives with you, or your mother-in-law, and she's using a wheelchair. A big one happens, there's a earthquake, sorry, a power outage, and all the elevators are not working. Everyone is rushing down the stairs. How are you going to take your mother-in-law who's in a wheelchair down those stairwell from the 8th floor or higher floor? So helping you imagine those scenarios and thinking about it. And this goes back to where we started when you both said community, community, community. If there is one message your audiences can take from this conversation, it is build your community. Why wait for bad things to happen? Look at every time Texas floods, those little girls lost. Community came together. So many people volunteered, came from all across the country to help and find uh, the folks who were lost. Look at LA fires, how people helped here. The outpouring of humanity is amazing. Our philosophy is why wait until bad things happen to come together? When you're walking down the street, say hello to your neighbor. If you live in a high-rise building with many apartments, we actually recommend in the app, you get a scoring system and you get a higher score. You are better prepared if you have relationship with all your neighbors. We actually ask you a question, and I'll ask you both. Do you have the keys to your neighbor's home, or do your neighbors have keys to your home? That is a reflection of trust. So when the disaster happens, they can go in and take care of your father, your mother, your somebody else who's staying with you. So I think building that community is absolutely critical.
Thank you, Vivek. Um, the examples that you gave, and even just in the midst of this conversation today, it's so incredibly personal, how we are talking about, examples where individuals are affected not just by the disaster, but their specific needs that they knew about beforehand. And, the communities that they probably existed in knew about those challenges beforehand, or knew about the intimate details of their lives in terms of what their needs are, whether they are physical disabilities, family constraints, whatever it is. I think having a conversation and putting the perspective of not only a disaster, but what community means to people in their own words, and making them consider it at the individual level is something that's really powerful, especially during this month. Um, can you define resilience in your own words for us?
Yeah, I was thinking about that recently. And, if you look at definitions from United Nations Disaster Risk Reduction, FEMA, NOAA, other agencies, they talk about, your ability to bounce back from the disaster that has happened. The way we see resilience is how good of a network of people around you have. And I will expand on what we just talked about. You look at what happened in August of 2023 with Maui fires. The fire hydrants were not working. The sirens did not go off. The power was off. The alerts did not go off. Physical infrastructure failed. But the social infrastructures, the social capital of neighbors going from door to door, knocking on each other's doors and saying, hey, the fire is coming, get out now. And then after the fires, people from different islands getting on the boat and bringing food and water and shelter. That's what happened. Look at what happened in LA fires. The alerts did not go out for Altadena, but folks immediately afterwards, they were at the Santa Anita track. There was such an outpouring of people bringing stuff to help folks who had been impacted. You look at Paradise fires, where the whole city of town of Paradise got destroyed. Physical infrastructure keeps on failing. The thing that keeps coming back is our social capital, people who are around us, who help us. Who There are just not enough first responders to get to you. I live in a Los Angeles County, 10 million people, 88 cities, unincorporated areas. If you took all the first responders, the policemen, the firefighters, that's maybe 16,000, 18,000. I'm making a rough guess. Those 18,000 people cannot take care of 10 million people, which is about 3.5 million households and businesses. And if the disaster happens, and that's what we encourage folks to think in the app, if the disaster happens at 11 a.m., first responders are going to go where there are most people, at 11 a.m. on a weekday. If it happens at 3 a.m. on a weekend, there's a different focus for them. And most fire departments have a SOP, a standard operating procedure, where they do a windshield analysis. They don't go start saving people right away. They go drive around, see what is the damage. They have to do an assessment before they allocate the resources. If you understand that, you as a family, if somebody in my family broke her leg or something happened during the disaster, fire engine is going to go by because they are doing their assessment, as is the protocol for them. Who's going to? So I know there's a physician, a hospitalist who lives on my block. I have a very good relationship with, not because she's my neighbor, but I have a selfish interest for something like that. There's an electrician who lives down the street, a plumber who lives down the street. Building that social capital, to me, that is what resilience is.
If you don't mind, Ashley, I just wanted to kind of interject here and mention that, there are several federal and state laws that require, you know, public places to have emergency plans, communities to have emergency plans. But you touched on something that should remind everyone listening to this podcast that you should have a plan for when those plans fail or those plans fail to be implemented. We've seen it over and over the past couple of years, a number of disasters where there were plans in place, but someone didn't turn the alarm on. Somebody didn't implement, a certain portion of the plan, and it resulted in unnecessary deaths. And I that's what I really love about Percy and what you're trying to accomplish with your business services, and that is to help folks prepare for when those plans fail, right? And it's all about unity of effort. We absolutely need to make sure if we live in a high-rise building and we have a family member that has a person with a disability, that they have to absolutely have a plan because although federal law dictates that that building have a plan, in an emergency to evacuate persons with disabilities, there's no guarantee that that plan will be successful or that plan will be implemented in time. So, absolutely, just that really resonated with me, and I appreciated that response.
I can add to that, John. Here in Los Angeles City, our previous mayor worked with the city council, and they passed laws or regulations to improve our building codes for earthquake readiness. One of the local newspapers, they did a survey and found 64,000 buildings that are not up to the latest code. So one of the things we encourage folks in the app, trying to remind them, don't forget to check that if you're renting the place you are in, is it up to code or not? So those things become very, very important.
Great point. Great point. Ashley?
John, Vivek, I think you've made a lot of really good points about the emergency planning and services that are around, not only that you need to think about in your day to day lives. Vivek, I think it was a wonderful point that you made about the time of day can make a difference when a disaster happens, too. Um, I think one of the things that really was interesting to me in learning the app and just getting insight for my own personal life and how I prepare was thinking about how you can have a plan when you're at home, but most of us travel and go throughout the world, and when we are talking about plans, we don't always know the emergency plans in the spaces that we're existing in, and that's why I think an app and having something that's very real time and something that's there with you, so you have a sort of base level of preparedness and resilience all the time is really effective. Could you tell us more about we've walked through the vest and we've talked about some of the capabilities, but I know it's more than that. So could you tell us a little bit more about the services that Percy offers?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Great point, and thank you for that question. So I think we think about we are leveraging what is a common knowledge now that we all carry a very, very powerful computer in our pockets all the time. And actually, when you and I talked a few weeks ago, I was showing you the app, and in the app, you put in your address, and we recommend all the meeting places that you should be. I cannot tell you how many cert classes I've been to where I ask the teacher, where should I pick a meeting place? Here is my address. Where, and folks give kind of this, dude, this is no clarity on that. So we say, Ashley, give us, you give me your mom and dad's address. We put that address and we found within 1 mile, if you cannot get home, if your cellular networks are down, you have a meeting place where you can meet within a mile of your home. But let's say the disaster happens in such a way, the police has cordoned off that whole area. Now you can only meet outside of a mile. So then what are those meeting places? We recommend 2 or 3. It could be like it came out after the fires, the best place to be is a parking lot because there is no flammable structure and you can meet there. So the algorithm of the app based on your location makes all those recommendations. The other point you mentioned, you could be traveling. Uh, so in the app, we have one button messaging. You come in, you tap, and it goes out as a text message to everyone, and we call it trust circle. So in your trust circle, you put in folks who obviously your family that you live with, maybe your mom and dad or your brothers and sisters who might be living other places. And there's a big one. Let's say something happens in Maryland right now. I'm worried how's Ashley doing? You go into the app and you say, I'm safe. Or if you're not safe, I'm not safe. I'm stuck on a freeway or we call it freeway, you call it highway. I am in this place and I'm walking back home and I will be there because there is the roads are not working. So I'll get home in 2 hours. You just tap it once and it goes to everyone in your family, in your trust circle. If they are outside the country, they might not get a text message. They will get the message as WhatsApp if they are on WhatsApp. If they have the app, then they will get the message within the app as well. The other thing we always recommend is whatever you do in the app, we prompt you to download it. So now it is on your phone. One of the biggest questions we get asked is, hey, when the disaster happens and there is no network connection, what will happen? So we always encourage you download your packing list, you download your meeting places, you download your school safety plan, you download your pet safety plan. So you have it on your phone. Obviously, keep your phone charged. That gets gets repeated so many times. Keep your this month is the preparedness month. Keep your gas tank at least half full. If you have electric car, keep it close to 50, higher than 50% charge. And one of the things I really like is keep your car facing outwards towards the street on the driveway. So if you have to evacuate quickly, instead of backing up, you can go that way as well. Don't forget about your garage. If there's no power, the door might not open. Everyone in the house should know how to open a garage door when there is no electricity. So uh, giving those kind of tips, that's another thing we do in the app. So yeah, a lot of functionalities. I'll tell you one thing, you'll find it funny. FEMA, you go to prepare Canada, prepare British Columbia, Australia, any other place, first thing everyone says is know your risk. So when we created the first version of the app, you put in your zip code and we gave you a list of disasters risk that are possible. We built it, we took it out, tested with folks. People were like, I don't want to see this. People got scared. Don't tell me this the first thing I do. So we had to move it in terms of designing the UI of our app. We give it in a place where later on, after you become comfortable, after you're used to the idea, and say, hey, don't forget to check. Most folks know, like, okay, I am in North Carolina, there might be flooding or hurricanes in Florida, New Orleans, obviously fires and earthquakes here. But if The first thing you tell everyone, this is your risk, people get turned off. So to be thoughtful in how we present what we are presenting to them becomes incredibly, important, especially for. So there was a study out by a project done by FEMA and Red Cross where they said, what is the status of preparedness across the country? They said 49% folks never think about it. 15% folks are actively thinking about it. And then in the middle, about 35% people who know they should do something, but they don't know where to start. And some other half, they've started something, but they don't know where to go next. And those are the folks we are trying to reach first and say, hey, here is one simple thing. So if somebody who has never thought about it and they downloads the app, and the first thing I tell you is there's 89, I use FEMA National Risk Index and say there is a LA County, Harris County in Texas, there's 100% chance, that's what the FEMA risk index says, of a disaster happening. You have never thought about it. That's the first thing I tell you. They turn off, like, I'm not interested. So how do you talk about these kind of things? And those are the things you learn. I think to your point, John, you said you have a strategy until you get punched in the face. So we had a strategy. We said, we're going to tell you about your disaster risk. We go to the market, boom, we got punched in the face. User doesn't want to know about the disaster risk first thing. So we need to be listening to how our folks who we want to get ready for disaster, how do they want to think about and be in their shoes?
Yeah, I think your point is well taken, Vivek, that people get very apprehensive. And, oh, this is also why you need to prepare, because in an event that would also give you a certain level of freezing up or, inability to make those decisions when you're under pressure. And I think it goes back to our point about not being actually scared of your community. Some of that is knowing the risk, and some of it is just acknowledging that there is a risk. There is a risk in life. And we do have a certain level of acceptable risk when we drive a car, walk down the street, and unfortunately, when we live in a neighborhood. And I think the three of us actually are geographically dispersed, and those risks are different. Some of the risks when you're talking about preparing for evacuation is some of the same things that you do when you're preparing for a snowstorm as well, because power can fail during a snowstorm too. And so being able to actually just have those conversations are really effective, and keep you less scared of your own community.
Yes, absolutely, and Ashley, this is gonna not gonna be surprising to you, but I have another great analogy to share. So, the Navy SEALs have a saying that no one ever rises to the occasion, they fall to the level of their training, and I think Vivek and you and yourself, Ashley, as well, really, kinda reinforced that point. Um, you can have plans, um your community can have plans, but if you are not practiced in those plans, you're not prepared to implement those plans, you're not gonna be successful and you're not gonna be able to mitigate, some of those risks that Vivek spoke to earlier or some of the impacts that are inevitable, that come with any emergency or disaster. So with that being said, Vivek, if you would, we would like to drill down a little bit more on Percy's services. Could you please tell us about the communities that Percy aims to serve?
Yeah. So great point you mentioned there. And just to continue on that thread about Navy SEALs and your, as you know, lay people, normal folks just going about doing their day-to-day job, having so many commitments, you are not thinking about bad things happening to you. We are humans, we are wired, we don't want to think about negative things. So how do you encourage somebody to imagine that worst case scenario? So that's one of the things we do in the app is talking about the services. After you've done some activity, starting getting ready, we give you a scoring mechanism system, and I'll come back to that in a second. We encourage you to start simulation. So you come into the app, you've shared your family profile. We say, okay, let's imagine it is Wednesday, 3 p.m. and this is your family, and a big earthquake has happened, fire has happened, hurricane, you are in Tampa and a hurricane has hit, or whatever, some flooding has started. Let's do a simulation. Let's try to evacuate. Here are the steps. As you do the steps, just tap on the app and say, I've done this. I've picked up my kids, put them in the car. I have my all the backup the documents in my lockbox. I have my important documents. Picked up my jewelry, packed my bags, put my all the things that are important to you in your packing list. You do it and you evacuate. How long does it take you? If it is on Wednesday 3 p.m., how long is it going to take you to go to school to pick up your kid? And then we say, okay, let's imagine now it is um, Saturday 10 p.m. Your teenager is not home; they are out someplace, and you have to evacuate. What's that plan? So we do a simulation, and I think this goes to what you were saying about Navy SEALs. Obviously, this is not Navy SEAL level practice, but some simulation to understand this is what you should be thinking about. The other thing I mentioned was a scoring system. So I come from a healthcare background. I used to take care of patients. And when you're in healthcare, a lot of work is very much a data driven measures. I can ask you how tall you are, how much do you weigh. If somebody comes in with, diabetes, what's your blood sugar, you measure it. What is it at the beginning? Then you do some diet, exercise, some medications. Does it go down? A hemoglobin A1C. There's a plethora of examples where in healthcare you manage based on those data. If I came to both of your homes, or I ask you now, John, tell me how well prepared your household is, how well prepared your family is. There is no scoring system, right? It's similar to how we are in the disaster world, we are thinking about, we don't have a name for a heat wave or a winter storm, right? There's a name for a hurricane, and everyone can gather around it or marshal the resources for Hurricane Katrina. But we don't have a heat wave. And so naming it, characterizing it, giving it a value makes everyone understand it much better. So the way we are trying to solve that problem for disaster readiness in the app is, as you come in and you do those different activities, you make a packing list, a meeting place, create a go bag, get your Perci vest, you go create your communication plan, your backup plan, backing up your documents and your home inventory. We haven't touched so far on the recovery. You get through the worst part of the disaster. I was driving through on the 6 month anniversary of LA fires. I went to Altadena, drove through complete annihilation, blocks after blocks destroyed, maybe one home standing damaged by smoke and ash. It is heartbreaking, right? But then you get out of that area and you go to Pasadena or you go to, Pacific Palisades, disaster. Those families, 6 months, now 8 months later, they are still in that fight. They are still trying to figure out, how do I rebuild? Do I not? I've met few folks who have left. They moved to Tennessee. They're like, okay, I'm done with this. That's
The
the
loss of community.
loss of community. So in the app, talking about the services, what we encourage you to do is create a home inventory. The number of insurance claims that are underpaid or delayed, there is a story in the local media about that for some of the folks here in LA. So if you have a home inventory, let's say you built a patio 3 months ago. The insurance company doesn't know you built a patio in your backyard. You file for insurance claim, they will say, I have no record of it. Now you say, oh, okay, now I have to go find receipts, maybe some photos you might have taken, somebody might have taken. It's all dispersed. While you are trying to live and do your job in an Airbnb and do your job, now you have to go gather all that information. So in the app, you create your home inventory, you document everything in simple way that you can then share it with the insurance company when you file for your claim. As you do those things, we give you a scoring. You say, okay, now you are 30% ready. So we have 3 levels. We call it basics, where you got your basics covered of evacuation, shelter in place. Really quickly, you can do that. Then there's a next level called strong. You have done much more. And then the full resilient or Perci resilient is where you have taken some classes. Maybe you know how to do CPR, you know how to do first aid, you know how to tie a tourniquet and those kind of things. And but the score goes down. Just like my blood sugar can go up and my blood sugar can go down, similarly, your disaster resilience can go up and down. Maybe you had some emergency at home, you were taking care of, my wife broke her ankle a couple of years ago. For 3 months, I was taking care of that. I had to file some documents with the local government. I forgot, I got fined for it, right? So when those things, your resiliency goes down. So to be aware of those kind of things. So I think, I'll say this last thing is part of this conversation. You can only manage what you measure. If I cannot measure how well prepared my home is, how disaster resilient I am, how am I going to be able to manage? How am I going to be able to track? Am I getting better? Am I losing weight or am I gaining weight? Am I getting ready for disaster better or worse? So yeah, those are some of the other things we do in the in Percy.
I love that, Vivek, and, I kinda wanted to draw a little bit of contrast between, the professionals in the resilient space who are the planners, and if there's any planners listening to this podcast, whether you're a planner for an agency or a community or a small organization, and you're wondering, how Percy can help you, well, we have a saying in the field where, we plan for all hazards. It seems that Percy is helping folks plan for all type of scenarios, right? It's a little bit different, and that's sometimes there's a gap there, and that's what I like about this podcast is we're talking about gaps, and we want to address those gaps. And so that was a great piece there that you provided, Vivek. So I know we've talked a lot about Percy's products, services. Um, is there an opportunity now maybe where Percy can enhance individual and community resilience? Would you like to kind of expand on that?
Yeah, so I think the way we think about it is also think about from a business perspective. So far, we've been talking about families, communities, small businesses. Businesses are part of our communities as well. There's data out from FEMA after a disaster, 25% of small businesses do not survive. So creating business continuity plans, creating what is your disaster recovery plan for businesses is absolutely critical. We lost some of our favorite restaurants down by the beach here in Malibu when the fires destroyed those. There's a fish shack, very famous. We used to go there, gone. So how do you then recover from it? Do you have a plan in place? And of course, there are a lot of players in that space, other companies that provide services where for bigger companies, your data center is safe, is your physical space safe? Where we come in is like to think about it, your workforce resilience. Your people are your biggest asset for most companies. Are they safe? Are they prepared? And we also, I was talking to somebody in Memphis just yesterday, and they were working with some of the local public safety agencies, and they talked about, are our first responders, are their families ready for disaster? So you're asking a first responder, and this happened here in LA as well. The firefighters who were fighting the fires, their own homes and families were impacted. So, how do you make sure, as a public safety agency, as a small business, as another kind of businesses, to say my workforce is ready for disaster? So that's another place where we come in and we offer services for businesses. You can offer it as maybe it is your HR folks who want to offer it as an employee benefit. Maybe it is your employee health and safety folks who want to be able to make sure that your employees are safe. And after COVID, as you know, the number of companies that have folks working remote or hybrid has gone through the roof. There's some data out there, 58% of our workforce is hybrid and 28% is fully remote. So if you are running a company and you have folks distributed across the country, across the world, a disaster happens, 5 of your team members get impacted, their home gets impacted in Jacksonville, who's going to be taking care of that project? Purely from a selfish interest, but from a progressive or thinking about your employee safety from that level, being a leader in thinking about your safety of your employees who are working remote, that's where we come in and we say, are they ready for a disaster? And when you work with us on those, we give you a dashboard, like I said, that shows you how prepared your workforce is. So that's how we think about, community resilience beyond families, beyond individuals, beyond, the neighborhoods. Also thinking about our business community.
Yeah, I think that's just actually an expansion of what we think of when it comes to community. Uh, mm, there is a joke that you don't call employees family, But your employees is a community that you have to manage when you think of the preparedness aspect of making sure that you have plans in place, for example, and making sure that you have a basic accountability. All of those things are actually community principles that you do want to take into how you actually manage a workforce. And that makes perfect sense as to why Percy would be expanding and offering some of those services as well.
Thank you. Yeah. I think like to like I would like to add that in our mission is that every household and every business across the world is disaster ready because this is our new reality. In our vision, everyone is ready for disasters. We have a strong community network, and we are humans. We all make mistakes. Errors will happen. I've talked to folks who work in emergency management. They are dedicated professionals who want to do a great job, who want to make sure that their communities are protected. But mistakes happen. Alerts did not go out. The water pressure wasn't there in Maui fires. So that's where for all of us to step up, and that is our vision, that Percy's vision, that everyone is ready for a disaster.
What a perfect way to end. Thanks, Vivek, for being with us today, stopping by and telling us all about Percy. And we look forward to future conversations, future episodes, and again, more individuals being prepared.